What did this year mean to you individually?
What are the day-to-day actions? What are the week-to-week, the month-to-month, the quarter-to-quarter, the year-to-year actions that we're going to take regardless of the season that we're in so that we can take the step forward in our life? We oftentimes hear this concept of reflections and we jam it into like the day that we're actually structuring our goals for the next year. We wonder why goals struggle so much in the first couple months of the year. We overwhelm ourselves with this huge, massive list of goals. Tori had mentioned earlier to the sense of if you don't have a target, you're going to miss it. Well, if you have 500 targets, you're not going to hit all of them. Celebrating our victories is an essential part of that path.
One of the ways that you can integrate your year or a transformational experience of any kind is giving that experience a theme. Ask yourself, was there a theme this year? Or maybe were there multiple themes? Was a theme of letting go? Was a theme of building something new? Was it a theme of investing in yourself?
You're going to walk away with a handful of goals, meaning that at most you can count them on both hands, more than likely be able to count them on one hand. What's the theme for your personal expansion in 2026?
Your theme is like the North Star.
Just to keep it simple and to move with the seasons.
Back to your heart and back to your body and back to your inner knowing.
When you walk on the way appears. So I encourage you all just to keep walking, even when it might feel unclear. The path will lay itself in front of you. Welcome back to another episode of How to Stay Human. Do you remember when we got this formally off the ground?
I would say probably 3 months ago, honestly.
Has it only been 3 months?
Yeah.
I feel a little bit longer than that, hasn't it?
I don't think so.
Well, I will say it has been a total time warp, to say the least. It's been so much fun getting to spend time, not just getting to share this message alongside the person that I love, but also getting to share it with all of you that are tuning in with us. So thank you. It's been an incredible year, and really excited to start spending these conversations as we progress forward to 2026, thinking about what this new year might have in store for us. And most importantly, thinking about it from a new lens that I'm really excited to introduce. And it's a lens that Tori and I have been playing with a lot as well. When Tori and I, and I'll introduce it in a moment, but when Tori and I got the opportunity to come together in our partnership, it was spring equinox. Hard to forget. It was March 20th of 2025. Very special day, forever burned into my heart, that's for sure. And, when we think about what happens at that time of the year as we transition over to the spring, it's a time of birth and renewal and creation. So unsurprisingly, it was the time for our relationship as well. And yet, so many of us try to create in the depths of the time that is not the best optimized for their creations. They're seeking to bulldoze what Mother Nature has actually presented to us, which is the natural movements of the seasons. And so the idea that I'm really excited to introduce today alongside you, Hun, is this idea of what does it mean as we step into a new year of our life, a new chapter of our life, even a new month of our life. What does it mean to move with the seasons? Not to try to swim upstream, not to try to create just because of the pressures that society lays on us, but to try to create in rhythm and in harmony with Mother Nature. So really excited to play with that today.
I want to take a moment to share about a powerful mental health resource that has been a total game changer for me, and that's Anywhere Clinic. For the past 2.5 years, I've been working with an online psychiatric provider, and the impact has truly been incredible. Because therapy isn't just a tool for crisis moments. It's a tool for personal growth, emotional mastery, and overall wellness. And with Anywhere Clinic, you can get virtual expert care from the comfort of your home. Whether you're exploring ketamine therapy, you need medication management, or just a supportive guide, it's time to prioritize you. And you can by visiting anywhereclinic.com. You can book an online appointment for as low as $120 or check and see if your insurance covers it. So go to anywhereclinic.com because your mental health deserves it.
As we think about 2025, though, even before we start to move into this greater conversation about what's to come from all of us, I'd love to take a moment collectively, just as a species, to just stand back and ask ourselves, what exactly was humanity in 2025? And when I frame that question or pose that question, what comes up for you?
What was humanity?
What has humanity been in 2025? If you were to say humanity was this year, how would you describe us?
I would say polarized.
Mm-hmm.
In conflict with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you can look out at the world and see the disconnection and the upheaval and the breaking down of systems on macro and micro levels. Yeah, I think we live in a time that is more polarized than, I've ever seen it in my 34 years of living. I know that this isn't new, and there's been war and conflict for decades and decades, centuries, as long as we can go back and study our history. But yeah, that's what comes to mind as a predominant theme that I see. Yeah. What about you?
And just before I chime in there, I'd love to hear like the other side of that coin. Like, what would you say you're proud of? What are you proud of with humanity in 2025?
I'm proud of the quiet revolution and rebellion that's happening in small and large ways, in private conversations, and those that are standing up for new and old ways of being, I guess, publicly and privately, whether you're doing that in your little community or family or wherever. I'm proud of the way that we can come together when there is a need. And when that need or that problem is larger than, our perceived differences. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's like, we witnessed this a lot, particularly during COVID, where it was all of a sudden like we have a shared enemy, right? If the aliens ever arrived on our planet, we'd probably see greater unity, we would hope, amongst our species, because we'd have a shared threat. And it's not that we hope that, but what we are certainly seeing, and I totally agree with you, is that there is a quiet, and oftentimes it's starting to be a greater rumble. There's a rebellion that's occurring right now for sure. And I think we're seeing the threat, the existential threat of the non-existence of our species as being the thing that's slowly starting to bring certain groups of people together, right? Like, I'm starting, for the first time ever, being in the worlds that I'm in, I'm starting to see the word human and humanity, and the idea of us as a collective and a shared species is starting to be a real part of the conversation. There are activists and all sorts of groups and gatherings that are coming together with the sole purpose of supporting the long-term survival of our species. And so when I think about 2025, to answer the question that you shared earlier, like, the thing that stands out the most to me is that there is a deep desire amongst a large, profound group of people to figure it out.
Figure what out?
Figure out the conflict and the chaos and the divide. Figure out how we're going to wield technology to be to our benefit. Figure it out in terms of how we're going to manage our environment. Figure it out in terms of how we're going to be able to share and spread abundance with all and not just have it be held by a select group of people. Figure it out in terms of not necessarily subscribing just to the system anymore, but saying that I'm willing to try something that's of great risk to me so that I can pursue the thing that I most deeply care about.
What do you mean in terms of a great risk to you?
Well, I mean, the perfect example of this is entrepreneurship, right? I have a cushy corporate job paying me $1 million a year. I have something deep and burning in my heart that wants me to go create, say, a jewelry line, for example. And for the first 3 years of that business, I'm going to be completely underwater financially, but I'm willing to take that risk to do something that aligns with my heart. And to me, I'm seeing the greatest rise in entrepreneurship, dream chasing, independence, and so forth that I've ever witnessed in my life, for sure. And it continues to rise from the youth. And I think it's also being further supported by the fact that, as you've heard me share in this podcast before, I'm a deep believer that the greatest tools of creation are at our fingertips right now. But there's two different directions in which we can use them, right? We can use them to create in the same way that we can use them to destroy. So when I think of 2025, I think of a species that's really working to figure it out. And I do believe that there are people that really want to birth a future of greatness, of hope, and of abundance for our kind.
Where have you seen that most prevalent? Like, because I know you have an interesting perspective because you sit at an interesting intersection and have access to conversations and people who are doing work that a lot of us don't. Because just playing devil's advocate here, I don't know how many people who, when they look at the news, they see that message or they see that perspective being shared. So what gives you that perspective?
Well, I think the first answer to that question is I definitely don't receive that perspective through the news. That's for sure. I mean, the downside, of course, with modern media is it's always going to paint a picture that's going to sell. I mean, it's literally the crisis news network. It's ironic that we don't have a good news network. Like, I feel like that would do so well. But interestingly enough, the people that I've spoken with that have tried to start a good news network, like an opponent to CNN, for example, there's no funding there for them. There's no cash there for them because there's no quote unquote market validation for them. The demand isn't for what's happening in the world that's great and wonderful and incredible. The demand is for what's crushing us, right? And that's unfortunately why modern media and mass media tends to feed us the things that shapes this perspective on life that it's actually all doom and gloom in a lot of ways, right? So that'd be the first thing, is like really being mindful of my source of information. I mean, the second thing is if we were to really think about like what are the biggest victories that happened in 2025? Why am I so hopeful for our species? I mean, there was a great website that I took our audience through several episodes back, which were all these proof of abundance charts. And it's basically like 140 charts that Pierre Diamandis, someone that I'm close with, and I work in one of his organizations, created. And it's basically showing, a decrease in infant mortality, an increase in overall access to food, access to education, access to water, access to power, access to literacy. Like everything is collectively rising right now. Even though it may not feel that way, we are collectively actually improving as a species. But by far, the biggest democratization that's becoming available to us right now is the access to an intelligence like we've never been able to command before. I mean, AI being as readily and easily as accessible to nearly anyone that has connection to internet is a pretty incredible and marvelous feat for our species. Now, again, it doesn't mean that this is all good, right? But what it means is that there's an opportunity. And that's an opportunity that I'm willing to take a bet on, because I don't think we have another choice. We either say it's all going to go up in flames, or there's a slim chance that we figure it out. And so when I think about us figuring it out and us waging the war of goodness, if you want to call it that, I have to ask ourselves, well, what are we equipping ourselves with, right? And I look at things like artificial intelligence and many of the other exponential technologies that are coming out in the world, in addition to a collective rise in consciousness. And I say those two things potentially wielded together might actually birth a future that's worth living in.
I agree, and yet we need leaders who also believe in that, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the leadership that is running our country right now, I just like to presence the reality of most Americans, and most, which is, yes, all of those things are on the rise that you just described, and so is inflation, and so is grocery prices, and so is healthcare costs, and so it's not that that perspective isn't valid, like what you're saying. I think it's so important. And one of the values and goals and intentions of this show is to bring that perspective of abundance and what the world can look like when we're intentional and conscious about the way in which we navigate complex problems, right? And yes, it's easy to look at the news and to see nothing but doom and gloom and feel completely overwhelmed and just collapse under that. And there are also real challenges that people are facing right now. And so as we think about 2025, there is so many variables that go into what this year meant for each of us individually. Mm-hmm. For us, and we're so fortunate, like so blessed and so privileged, and we've also worked so hard to get where we are in life. And so for you and I, this was an uniquely abundant, beautiful, expansive year for us. Mm-hmm. And some people, the season that they were in this year was not that, so I think back on like years past before this one, some of my years when I'm at this point juncture and I'm reflecting on the year past, it was like really hard, like going through deep shadow work and deep initiations and deeply letting go of certain things. And some years are like, you feel like you're in an upward trajectory, and some years you feel like you're in a downward trajectory. Mm-hmm. And I just like to presence it that like everyone has a very unique experience, and overall, this is a beautiful time and season to step back and think about what did this year mean to you individually, what shaped your year, what were the wins, what were the things that you're celebrating that went really, really well for you, or the surprises that life brought into your field in your life that you maybe didn't see coming that were really beautiful surprises.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything Tori's saying. The reality is, everyone's experience, everyone's year is going to be completely individual to them. When I look at the collective, when I look at our species as a whole, I do see us looking back at a year that set up the infrastructure for a lot of human flourishing. But that doesn't mean that we're going to take advantage of it. Where we're ultimately going to take advantage of it is in what Tori's describing, which is what are the day-to-day actions, what are the week-to-week, the month-to-month, the quarter-to-quarter, the year-to-year actions that we're going to take, regardless of the season that we're in, so that we can take the step forward in our life. Because as anyone has always said, change happens not when we go out in the world, but when we go into our world, right? You can't change the world unless you change yourself, right? And so I think that's why, this idea of honoring the year that was is first and foremost so incredibly important in this journey of getting ready for the year that's to come. And so one thing that I want to invite in is that whatever year you may have just had, whatever perspective that you may have had on our species, the one encouragement that I would always bring, and one of the things that's the most deeply motivating to me, is to make sure that along the way, you're celebrating the things that feel like wins to you. I think especially in Western culture, we typically have this perspective of like, go as fast as you can and leave everything behind, which is why oftentimes you can talk to someone in the American culture and say, hey, what'd you do today? And they'll only remember the last 5 minutes, because that's the only thing that matters to them is what just happened and what's about to happen, and not necessarily what they've done or what they did, right? And so I just want to make sure that we don't skip over the things that we're proud of, the things that we've accomplished, and of course the things that we've also learned, and so maybe in some cases the things that we've survived as well. I just want to make sure that we recognize that along the journey to whatever our greatness looks like, celebrating our victories is an essential part of that path, and it's especially a critical part as we start to think about crafting and creating our narrative for the time to come ahead of us.
When I facilitate psychedelic journeys, the thing that I focus on is integration afterwards. And one of the ways that you can integrate your year or a transformational experience of any kind is giving that experience a theme, naming it with a theme. Like, so if I have a client that's going through psychedelic journey of some kind, there's typically a theme of that journey. And I find that to be true of my year too. So that's something that you can think about when you're doing your reflection practice. Hopefully you're making time to actually sit down and carve out some sacred and structured time to reflect on your year before you pivot into January and start thinking about everything that you want to do and you have planned for what's to come in 2026. Is ask yourself, was there a theme this year? Or maybe were there multiple themes? Was a theme of letting go? Was a theme of building something new? Was it a theme of investing in yourself? Was it a theme of really taking care of your health? Was health, a primary factor? That can help you identify what this year, really meant to you and the things that it brought up for you to learn, grow through, or, some of the things you might be celebrating.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one thing I'll add on to that in this process of reflections is that I think that we oftentimes hear this concept of reflections and we jam it into like the day that we're actually structuring our goals for the next year or planning the next month of our life. And we have a moment where we're like, oh, these five great things happened. I did them. Great. Go me. We push that to the side, and then we move on to the bulk of whatever the conversation is about, which is likely 95% about what am I going to create? What am I going to do? What's to come? Right. One reframe I want to bring into the equation is something that I was sharing earlier in this conversation, which is that we are out of sync with the seasons, right? Really what should be happening at this time of the year in the natural cycle is that December, January, February, and even the months that kind of pad that as well are months of winter time, right? They're slower, they're more reflective, and they're most definitely focused on less outward momentum. And so we wonder why goals struggle so much in the first couple months of the year. We have this amazing explosive energy that moves into January 1st, where, I mean, you know, the classic story, everyone's back in the gym, everyone's creating their thing. And then the interest and the intrigue and the engagement of those things just progressively goes down as the first 2, 3, 4 months of the year goes on. And then you'll see people pick things back up again in the spring and the summer, which is back into the natural cycle of things. And so, you know, as Tori is talking about this idea of reflections, I just want to tune into the seasonal reality associated with that as well, and start thinking about if we're really going to create a strategy that is in alignment with the natural rhythms of Mother Earth, the winter season as a whole should be focused on reflection, intention settings, and then also just gentle systems to help to support that. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, because I mean, you've toed the line between both worlds. You've been in like the deep corporate hustle where I'm sure January 1, you're like off to the races in Q1. And then I know you've also been in the lens you've looked at life through the frame of a more conscious and more grounded perspective. So how do you look at goal creation, especially within the context of the seasons and maybe within the context of the psychometric maps as well, like numerology and so forth?
I think the number one thing I do is listen to my body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think your body and you are your greatest like barometer for that.
That's a great point.
Versus always looking outside of ourselves for what should I be doing now? Am I doing good now? Should I be doing this now or this later? Right? It's like listen to your own, like my goal is, can I be so deeply attuned to the rhythms of my personal cycles and know my energy and my body so well that I can capitalize in the times that there is clarity, where I can put that forward momentum and press my foot on the gas with intention, versus, you know, just falling into these conditioned ideologies and ways of being that says, oh, I just need to go as fast as I can. Like you said, I just need to put my foot on the gas and just keep going. Even if my car is blowing smoke and like I'm on the edge of burnout, right? Mm-hmm. Like so many clients that I've worked with have come to me in seasons where they are trying to do so much and they've been doing it for so long and they're wondering why they're completely depleted and exhausted and have nothing left to give. And I sit with them and I ask them, when's the last time you've actually like listened to what your body's trying to tell you? And how often are you bypassing that and overriding that for the sake of productivity? And that is, although it might help you gain some small wins in the short term, in the long term, it's one of the worst things you can do. And so for me, yeah, I definitely look into my numerology for the year and like what that year number is, my life path number, like what the theme might be for that year. I definitely look into, you know, I'm aware that during the winter solstice is very much an intentional time for me to go inward and do the reflection piece. And if I've got energy to create, I'm going to create. You know, I'm not going to say, oh, no, I can't, because then it becomes dogma again, right? That you have to do it this way, and this is the only way you can do it because this is so-and-so said so, right? I don't care what school of thought you come from, the moment that you're like, it has to be one way, and if you don't do it this way on these dates, then it's wrong. We've stepped into dogma. And so I am anti-dogma, pro listening to your inner authority. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
it most definitely does. I mean, I think that the thing I want to highlight with what Tori said, more importantly than anything, is to not subscribe to a system that is not specifically designed for you. The only system that we definitively know is designed for us is the one that exists inside us. And so the ask here for all of us and the invitation is to follow your energy, right? Most importantly, to not submit to, you know, a dogmatic practice or a system that's not necessarily designed to serve you. My invitation is just holistically, as a starting place, we can say, well, Mother Nature didn't design it this way. We know that for sure, because in Mother Nature's grand vision, in the winter months were months for, again, slowness, stillness, hibernation, reflection, and so forth. What Tori's point is that builds off of that is this idea that we don't necessarily have to submit to any rhythm, right? Except the rhythm that is most of the highest service to us. And I think you can dig deeper into that as we continue this conversation around how you can overlay your personal psychometric maps, your numerology, your birth charts, etc., over your goals. I just want to start with this greater point that the most important thing for us to do is to move with what feels natural for us.
Yeah, and just to go back to what you were saying earlier, like overall, our calendar is around like 2 months off. Like, just even think about it. Like, October is our 10th month. It should be our 8th month.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the name, October. You know.
Great point.
Like, so if you have found it challenging to create goals in January, to get the momentum going, to stick with it, and to stay accountable to your resolutions.
That is such an ironic point. I just want to call that out, by the way, what Tori just said. The Latin root of October is oct, which means 8.
8.
And it's the 10th month of the
like,
year.
we have been intentionally
It was the 8th
blinded.
month of the Roman year, fun fact.
So, our new year, don't get me started on, the holidays and Christmas and how, we have been sold a narrative so that we can be sold to and so that we can stay in systems of oppression that keep us small and enslaved to a system that controls us. Okay. Yeah, being told that Jesus is born in December is a lie. That is not accurate. Christmas, the 25th of December, is not Jesus's birthday. It is a day that has now represents that day for practicing Christians, but that is not actually when that occurred. So it's very important that we ask questions and that we understand why things are the way they are, and not just accept everything that's told to us. Mm-hmm. Don't just believe everything you're told, because there are institutions that have put things in place to intentionally pull the wool over your eyes. Mm-hmm. And my job and our goal is to start to liberate ourselves by chasing truth, right? And sharing the truth that we find as it's revealed to us. And so, if you've ever found it challenging to stick with your goals and resolutions in the new year, there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason for 100%.
It. 100%. And I just want to be super clear, too. What Tori and I are saying is not to say, don't plan goals, don't be amazing in January, don't celebrate Christmas. That is not the message at all. It's about everything that we do it in life, doing it with knowledge, awareness, and intention.
Why do you do what you do? Right. And asking yourself, why do I do what I do? Why do I do it when I do it?
Exactly.
Is it because this is just what's been prescribed to me? This is just when everyone else does it? I'm just following along as part of societal norms? Or do I actually understand at a deeper level why I operate the way I operate?
And if I can make a conscious and cognizant choice to still take that action, knowing the why and the when, then now I have reclaimed some command over my life and some direction over my life, and I've sat back in the driver's seat versus being driven, right? And so that's the only invitation here. It's not saying that anybody is doing anything wrong. It's not saying that society is doing anything wrong. It's just saying that there is no one size fits all model. We are all different and unique in the way that we create.
That being said, Kyle and I have set our goals for the year.
100%.
We have taken time to reflect on 2025 and also cast a vision for 2026. And I'll say this, that's we're probably 30 minutes into this episode. If you haven't caught on, we're talking about goals and visioning for this episode and kind of what we did and why we did it the way we did it. And hopefully this brings some awareness and kind of ideas to you that you might want to implement if it feels good and feels aligned for you. But what I'll say to kind of wrap up my piece on this is, yes, it's important to take time to reflect on this year. What did it mean to you? What did it require from you? What areas did you grow? What did you celebrate? What were your wins? What was the theme? And then thinking forward, it's like, you can't hit a target you can't see, right? So for me, this year, when I think about my personal goal that I had for 2025, one of the themes that I had identified that was really important to me was my physical health. This year, I was able to drop 20 pounds. I invested in myself in order to get a lot of blood work done, to really understand my hormones better, to get in a routine with my, working out and doing all my wellness. And so that was like a theme that I had for this year. And one of the things that I reflected on in our practice together. And so, yeah, just bring that forward so that it's something that you can think about too. And I was curious if there was a theme for you this year.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to close that last piece too, and just say that again. The only invitation here is that we're taking our actions with knowledge and awareness and intention in all that we do. And to Tori's point, we absolutely like to use this time because society has given us a breather and a break. So if society is going to give us a breather and a break in December and say, hey, that's the time where you can sit back and chart out your next year, great. The only thing that I like to do is I just like to overlay my knowledge of seasonal change, my own energetic path, and so forth, so that I know how I can structure the goals around the year that's fit for me. Right. And of course, when I think about my 2025, I mean, my 2025 was a big year of foundational development. It was a big year of stepping more deeply into my manhood. It was a big year of really mastering my financial body. It was a big year of creation for me. And of course, it was a big year of finding my partner and starting to commit to a life alongside her. So 2025 was undoubtedly incredible. As we were mapping out 2026, though, there were a couple things that came to mind. Tori and I had an amazing session a few weeks ago. And I think the biggest thing that stood out to me as I was kind of helping to craft some of this framework that we stepped into is that another big reason that goals don't do well, in addition to them just being seasonally out of alignment, is the fact that we over-goal ourselves. We overwhelm ourselves with this huge, massive list of goals. Tori had mentioned earlier to the sense of if you don't have a target, you're going to miss it. Well, if you have 500 targets, you're not going to hit all of them. And so my invitation, as I was thinking about our goal planning session, was how do I make sure that every single thing that I put on the board is A, something that actually can be achieved, and B, is something that's actually going to create meaningful impact in my life. So simplicity and meaningful impact were like the overarching filters for everything. And then in the spirit of just getting technical for a second here, I really believe in the SMART goal development concept. And if you're not familiar with SMART goals, it's an acronym. The acronym is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And essentially what that means, specific is an easy one, right? Simple, clear. I know exactly what that means. It's not something like I'm going to be better. It's I'm going to do these 3 things to better myself, right? Measurable, of course, super clear. I'm going to do this thing by this date. I'm going to achieve, X amount of weight. I'm going to pick up, X amount of new jobs, whatever the story might be. Measurable is relatively understandable. Achievable, of course, again, I can actually do it. Relevant is that it's relevant to the greater vision I have stacked for my life, and we can get into that momentarily as well. And then time bound, of course, is that it has a specific time frame to it. The key piece here is, in addition to Tori's point of if you don't have a target, you're going to miss it. The second piece is if you can't measure your progress, you're never going to know if you actually achieved your goal. And so a big part of SMART goals are that measurable and time bound piece as well. So I think the biggest anchoring question that I would have as we're thinking about goal development is, if this goal worked, right? If I achieved this goal, would my life actually change? Simple. If it wouldn't change in a way that's especially meaningful to you, then I would question of whether it's even worth having it on your board to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So thinking about taking goals a step deeper here, that's the overarching framework. So if we can picture mentally a whiteboard on the wall, we would have that sitting at the top of our whiteboard to make sure to say that all of our goals are meaningful, they're simple, and they're SMART. S-M-A-R-T, the acronym SMART. And so we can use that as the framework for which we put all of our goals underneath. And it simplifies the goal process immensely. And frankly, out of the end of this process, you're going to walk away with a handful of goals, meaning that at most you can count them on both hands, more than likely be able to count them on one hand. But the next step, when I think about goal development, I like to break it down really cleanly into just 2 categories. And so again, imagining your mental whiteboard, a horizontal line drawn through the middle of it. We have our personal goals and we have our professional goals. And I know that's rudimentary, and I know there's a lot of other ways we can describe those 2 things, but simply put, our personal goals are the goals that are directly meaningful to the things that we do inside ourselves, right? So the things that we're doing to serve us directly. And professional goals are oftentimes the things that we're bringing out into the world, right? And so personal, a really great framework for thinking about what personal means in terms of goals, is to reference back to the 7 energetic bodies that Tori and I spoke about on an earlier episode. I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to it as you're getting ready for your goal development. But in short, the 7 energetic bodies are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, primal, social, and financial. And those 7 energetic bodies will cover the majority of your personal goals. And you can look at each one of those individual bodies and say, what am I trying to achieve financially? What am I trying to achieve socially? What am I trying to achieve physically? Super simple framework. Of course, there's a couple things that it will not cover. And I'm not going to say the 7 energetic bodies are perfect at covering everything. Oftentimes what they tend to miss is life logistics. So when Tori and I are working on our boards, on our goal board, it was our 7 energetic bodies plus life logistics. So we had things, like admin and house and car and systems and travel and those types of things. So my point there is that there's some stuff that will live outside those bodies. Call that the life logistics admin category, and then you'll have your primary 7 energetic bodies. And again, an easy way to develop your goals out is just to think of what are my top 1 to 2 priorities for each of these energetic bodies as we go into the year. And then as you're mapping those all out, I'd encourage you to tie them all to a theme. So Tori had talked about a theme of her 2025 being a big year of health for her. My invitation is, as you're creating your personal goals, what's the theme for your personal expansion in 2026? What is the thing that you want to be known for, right? What is the thing that you want to be able to say to yourself, I did this, I became this as a result of me achieving my goals in 2026, or this is the thing that's going to motivate me to get there, right? Whatever the core theme is, it's important to have 1, 2, or 3 descriptive words that sit at the top of your personal goals that can basically define how you want to live this year. Mm-hmm. So again, we think about this stack. I just want to paint the mental whiteboard picture again. On the top, we have our keep it simple, make it meaningful, and smart. Those are our kind of key frameworks that overlay our personal goals. We have our personal goals across our 7 energetic bodies and our life logistics, and we have an overarching theme that overlays over everything, which is representative of how we want to be in 2026. And so I would love to hear it. We got to work through this session together as we were going through our personal goals. What were the things that stood out the most to you? And also just out of curiosity, I know you're really a master at this idea of simplifying the goals and making them really clear and directed. 2025, you were just health. That's it. It didn't mean other things didn't matter, but you knew what your target was. And so how did you go through the process of cutting through the noise and getting really clear on what you want to focus on?
I think it's getting clear about what what's driving you. For me, I was really at the beginning of last year, I had noticed that each year, preceding the last had some sort of theme, especially as, when I think back to when I started to become conscious of goal setting, right? Mm-hmm. There were so many years where I was not goal setting. I was not vision boarding. I was not bringing attention to this time of the year outside of maybe a New Year's resolution of here and there. But things change when you have awakened to living your life consciously. Okay. You tend to be a lot more intentional, ideally, about how you live your life. And so as I have developed as a human being and as a woman over the years, I have gotten more and more intentional. And I've also become more and more reflective.
That's adulting 101 right there.
Yeah, it's just a natural progression of maturing and growing and becoming more self-aware. And I noticed that each of the years, when I was thinking back, typically had a theme. There was a year I was doing a lot of emotional healing or a lot of self-discovery, and I was trying a lot of new things. There was a year where I was really working on, my mental body, and I was really working on, the belief systems that I had and the stories that I was telling myself. And so a lot of that year was focused on, cleaning up my mentality, getting into a growth mindset. And one of the things sometimes the year is around relationships or friendships or, community building. And one of the things I had personally put off was my health. Because I had been able to manage it for a really long time and I had no, big quote unquote red flags or issues. And I often think that people create goals around the thing that's causing them the most pain. Because it's like you want to stop the bleeding as quickly as you can. So the areas in which you're bleeding out, those are typically the areas you have goals around. Okay. But my health kind of like flew under the radar. I was not bleeding out. So I kind of kept kicking that can down the road. And if you think about things you procrastinate on, it's usually because you think you can get away with it.
Yep.
Right. Until it comes to bite you in the ass and you're like, oh, I should have paid attention to that thing.
Yes.
So for me, I really was like pondering and like chewing on this idea of what does it mean to be healthy, but not healthy just physically, but healthy in every area of my life. Like health is not just a physical aspect of who I am. I want health to radiate through my relationships, through, yes, my physical body as a representation of my health, but also through, what does it mean to be healthy in entrepreneurship? What does it look like to be healthy in my finances, in across all 7 energetic bodies? And so that felt like a good catch-all for what I wanted to focus on. And so if you can kind of drill down to like, okay, when you think about the things that you desire, like what is primary in all of that? For me this year, another, mastery is really important to me. So what I kind of decided for this year of what I wanted my kind of theme to be is I said, be the queen. So what does it mean to embody the queen archetype in all of these areas of my life? And so when I do set my goals, I ask myself, and you help me to reflect this, which is, does this goal, by achieving this goal, does that make you more of the queen? Or does that make you more of the healthy person that you want to be? Right? So it's your intention or your theme is like the North Star.
Yeah. It's a great point. Yeah, it's really good points. I think the other thing that's really helpful is like to Tori's point, it's the North Star. It's also the filter. It makes it so easy to say no when you know very clearly what your yes is. In the case of Tori in 2025, it was all about being healthy. So something that was clearly unhealthy for her. And a lot of your health was also around your physical body inside and outside, right? Those things are pretty easy to spot. This is not good for me. This is good for me. X. Be the queen is going to be a little bit more, it's going to be a little bit more intangible than that for Tori in 2026, but it's a sense and it's a known feeling of this is a yes, this is a no.
Yeah, but your theme isn't a goal. It's a North Star, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, and for me, when I think about it, it's a filter of what is really clearly a yes for me and what is really clearly a no for me. And it's a known feeling of this represents me being the queen, this does not.
Yeah.
Right?
Am I really, is this thing helping me to expand into all that I really am and stand in the power of that? And would, by achieving this, make me feel like I'm embodying the queen?
100%. So themes are really helpful when you're crafting those goals through that framework that I laid out on the personal side of the table. The professional side, you could think about, again, if we go back to our mental whiteboard, we have our horizontal line drawn through the middle. We have our personal goals that sit in the top. We have our professional goals that sit underneath it. Professional goals are, again, all about the things that we're bringing forward in the world, right? So we can think about them being our personal brand, our creations, our business, our career, and so forth. And those are a little bit more quantitative than your personal goals are. Your personal goals can oftentimes be a little bit more expansive, maybe a little bit more abstract at times, whereas your professional goals, the recommendation and the invitation here is to keep them really dialed in. And so simple ways to measure professional goals for all of our entrepreneurs out there and career chasers and so forth, reach, output, revenue, having very, very clear milestones around what impact might look like for you, employee headcount. I mean, there's all different things that we can use, all different key performance indicators, so to speak, KPIs, to determine what our professional goals are. But I think the biggest point that I'm making here is that because it's quantitative, it needs to be measured, right? And so, for example, if you're someone who's creating an amazing personal brand and you're at 100K followers right now, tell yourself specifically where you want to be at the end of the year and start crafting that model out of where you need to be at the half year mark and each quarter, and what you need to do every single month and every single week to achieve that. The reason that particular path is so important is very much in line with what Tori was describing a second ago, which is this idea that we want to be able to stay motivated even in the micro moments, right? And so by having very clear targets, which I'm recommending even more on the professional side than the personal side, it's really easy to stay motivated within the mundane, so to speak. When I'm in the midst of say, for example, creating that next video so that I can get my follower count up by 25 this week. I'm doing it because I'm trying to achieve X follower account by the end of the year. And I know if I do that, I'll be able to create X impact, right? And so I'm such a big believer that we take our overarching goals and we break them down as deep as granularly as we can into even daily actions, because then when you're stuck in the thing that would otherwise be perceived as boring, unexciting, or unmotivating, you can see that through line that takes you all the way to the core goal that you've set for yourself. And that keeps the wheels turning. And that for me keeps me marching and motivated, even on the days that don't feel like necessarily as exciting as the next one, right? And so that being said, when I like to think about my professional goals and actually splitting them out on that whiteboard that I've spoken about, of course, I think this piece of, and maybe that's part of your theme for your professional goals, but you can set your theme for whatever you like. But right underneath that, make sure that they're all measurable, right? So it's my theme, they're measurable. And then I break them down to two categories. So one is, what are the things that I'm continuing forward from the year before? A lot of us who are in the midst of creating great businesses, growing great income streams, and so forth, we already have the wheels in motion, right? So it's, how can I actually maintain or build momentum on the things that I'm already doing, right? And then the other side is the new creations, right? New ventures, new roles, new expressions of whatever your work that you're bringing forward is. Those can sit side by side with each other, but let's not lose track of the fact that the things that are working, if they're still working, we got to make sure that they continue to work. Creating goals is not about creating everything new per se. It's about making goals that continue to support the things that are working for you, right? And you can go down even further down this path when you're describing these lenses, in that you can think about, again, the things that I'm already creating and the new things that I want to bring. And then underneath that, with as sort of branches of each of those, what am I doing in terms of my career and entrepreneurial ventures? And what am I doing in terms of my personal brand? And for some of us, those both are the same. But for those of us where they're not, my invitation, and we can go much deeper in this in another time with our friends listening here, is always to make sure that there's time poured into my entrepreneurial ventures, my career, and so forth, and also in my personal brand. They work in harmony with one another. Of course, Tori is the queen of this. And so the one question I'd have for you, is we're kind of moving towards a close on developing these goals out, is like, a lot of what I'm basically saying here is that there's a certain, like, when you're developing out your professional goals, there's a certain level of just like consistency and maintenance on the things that are already working. Like for me, this next year is going to be a lot of maintenance. It's like, I built all this momentum in 2025. Now it's about maintaining it, right? And then there's all this other side, which is all about experimentation, right? And a lot of your upcoming year will be about experimentation, trying new things, launching new things, and so forth. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you balance between those two, between maintaining the consistency but also leaving room for new things to be born?
How do I maintain the balance? I mean,
how do you keep your systems moving? I mean, and especially during a time for you when you have a lot of new things that are coming to life.
Maintaining requires systems.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if a goal of mine is to have X amount in retirement savings, then I need a system for every month. There's an automatic withdrawal from my account into my savings account or 401k or whatever that does it without me having to think about it, right? That's helps those things to flow without needing a lot of time and maintenance from me. Now, I have to maintain, like, physically, I've come a long way, but now I'm in a maintenance phase with my physical body, right? Is continuing the routines that I've put into place in this year, and not getting sloppy and not getting lazy and not thinking, oh, well, because I've hit my goal, now I can just completely quit all the things that got me here. But also understand things need refinement. Like, what got me here might not be what takes me to the next level, right? So then it's about refinement and getting even more precise. Precision becomes important. But in terms of having space and time for experimentation, I think, it's to teach their own, in terms of, you need to understand the season of life that you're in. Mm-hmm. And next week I'm going to take you guys through a framework that I created called the 7 Seasons of Becoming Human. And I really encourage you to tune into that, because if you're trying to create new things in the wrong season, you're going to get really, really frustrated. Sometimes the thing that you need to be doing is the opposite. And we can get really stuck and frustrated when we're playing, we're trying to play by the rules of the wrong season. Yeah, I'm mindful and attuned to my personal cycles, and I have my North Star of like, where do I want to be professionally, personally, in all these different areas. And then it's tracking that, right? Like, so every month, or, having a system for reflecting on like, how am I doing? And if I'm not doing, then there needs to be some editing, right? There needs to be, okay, maybe I need to take some bigger risks. Well, maybe I said I was going to try some new things, but I haven't yet. So I need to like experiment with maybe launching a product or an offer or whatever, depending on what it's very personal, depending on the goals that you have for yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, all I'll say is that continue to keep your foundation solid so that you can experiment on top of it, right? Continue to make sure that the base of your tree is really well rooted so that the branches can grow far and wide in all different directions, right? And so that's where we find that balance between consistency and also experimentation. We want to leave room for both. But to Tori's point too, and I want to, we'll leave space in our next episode to talk a little bit further about this, but this idea of like, now we've got everything on the board, we've got our personal and professional goals laid down, and it's like, how do we ensure that those goals are also aligned with the season of life that we're in, right? How do we ensure that they are aligned with things like the 7 seasons framework that Tori described, or your human design, or your numerology, or astrology, or your personality frameworks? These are all things that we can overlay on top of our goals to ensure that we're operating in what the natural rhythm of our life is. And that's kind of what I was sharing earlier. And so all I'll share on that point is that this, of course, is not intended to replace your goals. This is just to inform how your goals are pursued. And so my invitation there is, once you have everything on the board, to ensure that you don't force anything, take it all and run it through whatever AI you prefer, whether it's a ChatGPT or a Gemini or whatever. Run it through and say, hey, chat, these are the goals that I'm setting for myself over the course of the next 12 months. Are these goals in alignment with these various different psychometric maps that I just mentioned? And see what it fits. And, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that you know yourself so well that the AI will spit back to you and say, you're right on target, or you might want to tweak this or this, because we have an intuitive sense of where we're at in our life. And Tori will explain more how you can apply the 7 seasons framework in addition to these other ones. But I think you'll be surprised how close you are. And also, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, because sometimes in our life are about expansion, sometimes some seasons of our life are all about integration. And so we just want to make sure that we leave space for both, depending on what time of our life that we're in. Just something to think about to help to further refine the goals. And then, of course, the last piece is, now that our goals are on the board, they've been refined, one other thing I would encourage you to do is look at all of your goals and see where they're taking you. Right? So you're going to have your 1-year goals, build those out to now a 3-year target and a 5-year target. Those 3 and 5-year targets should not be overly complex. 1 or 2 priorities in terms of what you want to achieve. But the most important thing there is that we can again see the through line from our 1-year goals and how that serves into our 3-year and our 5-year goals. And then we just do the same thing the other direction. So we say 1 to 3 to 5, and then we say 1 to a half year and to quarters, right? And so we start to break our goals down into smaller, more manageable chunks. We say, this is what I'm seeking to achieve in the next 6 months. This is what I'm seeking to achieve in the next 3 months. This is what I'm seeking to achieve in the next month. We break it down to each month, and then each week, and then each day. The idea is that more than anything is that we want to have some sort of like execution layer. And again, like I shared earlier, we want to be able to be motivated within the mundane. We want to see how our daily actions are serving the greater goal that we've set out for ourselves. It's all about staying connected to the greater picture. And so, what I'll say as we close up this episode today, I think the biggest thing that I want to just reinvite again is just to keep it simple. Just to keep it simple, and to move with the seasons. There's seasons that we operate in terms of the cycles and the seasons of Mother Nature. There's seasons we operate in terms of our internal seasons, which Tori's going to explore with you all more in our next episode that's coming out. And of course, along the entire journey, celebrate. You deserve to win, and we all deserve to notice our wins when they're happening versus just move to the next to become. So I hope that you all absolutely crush it in 2026. I have deep hope for our species and deep hope that it's going to be a wonderful and profound year for us. Any final words, Tori?
Yeah, I mean, my prayer and wish for you is that you take time to to think about this, not just to think about it, but feel into it. It's easy to get caught up in the head and the thinking and then the planning and the strategy. But I'm always going to invite you to come back to your heart and back to your body and back to your inner knowing. And that comes through moments of stillness, moments of deep listening to the part of you that knows and is trying to get your attention and take you towards your highest evolution and your highest timeline and path. But if you are moving at such a rapid pace and you aren't making time to slow down and be intentional and create a vision that is in alignment with your deepest truth and deepest heart's longing, and instead you're just trying to keep up with what your friends are doing or what you see people online doing, and you think, oh, I need to be doing that too because that's what everybody else is doing, I promise you're going to go in a direction that is going to take you so much longer to get where you really want to go because you're following the person in front of you. You know, I see that we don't get where we want to go in life for a couple different reasons. You're either waiting on life to hand you the directions, which doesn't happen. Life says, get moving, get started, and then I'm going to prompt you with the next right action, right? It's not like you put in your goal is a destination that you're putting in, right? It's saying, I want to go from here to there. And if I want to go to San Diego and I've never been there before, I'm going to put that into my spiritual GPS and I'm going to expect life to give me all the prompts. And I need to go this way for this long. And then I'm going to take this road and there might be some heavy traffic here, you know, and we expect to know all of that ahead of time. But that's not how life works. Life says, get going, get moving, and then I'm going to present you with the next step. And if you're paying attention, then you'll get it, right? Or what I see people, so they're sitting, waiting, stuck, always waiting for the perfect time or the perfect plan or the perfect set of instructions that never come. Or what people struggle with is they're just following the person in front of them. They're just following their best friend. They're just following the crowd. They're just following what people are doing on social media. They're just following what their boyfriend's doing or what their girlfriend's doing, never making time to actually sit with their own heart and their own truth. And what I'll tell you is if you're following someone, they better be going in the same direction you want to be going. Otherwise, you're going to end up somewhere you didn't ever expect. And you're going to wonder why, oh, I'm still 40 years old and I'm not living the life I want to be living. We have to wake up and become responsible for our lives and the futures that we're creating for ourselves. And if you had a year that was challenging, you have my heart, my compassion, my empathy. I've walked really, really, really challenging years before. And what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Where are we going to point our bow? Like, what direction are you headed? And that is something you get to decide. That choice is yours. And my invitation is to be intentional about, you know, the direction you choose to go and just take steps every single day in that direction, and you'll get so much further than you think.
Truer words, my love. When you walk on the way appears. So I encourage you all just to keep walking, even when it might feel unclear. The path will lay itself in front of you. To all of our amazing listeners, we appreciate you. Let's make it an absolutely incredible close to 2025. Let's make it a really strong start to 2026. And as you know, we are always here to support you along the way. See you next time.